Also, there, remember there was a little bit of this. Alabama plays games, non-conference games, good ones, but in Arlington, in Orlando, in Atlanta, or in wherever else, right?
Well, there wasn't a little bit of that. There was the whole like statistic about the fact they haven't played there in anywhere but close to home, basically, or neutral sites for years at this point.
It was since Penn State, like in 2012. I threw this up to Garrett. This is their future non-conference, and of course this year they were in Austin, and man, it was a battle. This is now their future. And leave this up for a little bit. Next year at USF, okay, they're on the road, though. Then 2024 at Wisconsin, not in Arlington or like even somewhere else, or Indianapolis. It's in Wisconsin. At Florida State.
That might be by the time Florida State can keep that competitive.
There you go.
So good.
At West Virginia.
You got 3
we
years,
mentioned
boys.
that yesterday. At Ohio State.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
At Oklahoma State, at Notre Dame, at Georgia Tech, Boston College, Minnesota, Arizona, Virginia Tech, and then they'll fill out 2035. Now, one of the things I think, first of all, that's great. The other part that I'd like to know about here is if, in fact, the SEC goes to 9 games, and then you have these 2 and the 9 conference games. You may have one, FCS school. But that right there, plus the 9 games, along with the additions of Texas and Oklahoma, that could be fun to watch how that plays out over the next few years.
Well, and look, the other thing that Alabama can show you with the schedule here is that, and of course, Nick Saban's not going to, I doubt he would be the coach in that Virginia Tech game, but maybe, I don't know, maybe he's got Tiger blood and can coach that long. But there are, now with the 12-team playoff, you can play these games and they won't hurt you as much. So I think part of the reason that some schools would shy away from doing that because, well, if you're not, like Alabama has a game this week against Tennessee, right? If they lose it, there's a mulligan. They've got it. It's fine. They're in Knoxville. There's a built-in excuse. Bryce Young's coming back from injury. They're fine. But, not everybody's like that, and Alabama is going to have to live in this world too. But, yeah, I think it's good to play these because they're going to have the opportunity to come back from it, especially in the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, and some look at that as a negative, that you can lose a game and still be, like, in the mix. And, I think if we get to a point where you've got, like, 4 and 5 lost teams, and, yeah, I'll raise an alarm as well. But, everybody having maybe a little bit more room to lose a game and still be able to have a chance, I don't think is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like, why are we so stuck on perfection, right? I mean, I think that's something that kind of became this ideal in college football that you have to live up to be considered worthy. And I think when you really kind of look back on that, it's sort of silly because not all the best teams are always perfect. I think the ones we celebrate the most, in fact, are probably not, or the ones that are most memorable. So, that's just something that college football's always kind of had a mindset about is, well, if you're not perfect, you're not one of the greats. And I don't know. I think that totally ignores the fact that teams get better as the season goes along, that sometimes a team's not good in the first month, but they might be the best over the last 2.5, but they're not really rewarded for that. You're treated the same losing a game in December as you are in like September. And that's just, and I know there's a little bit more room than I'm giving it credit for, but it's kind of how it is. So I like that if, you're given a little bit more of a space to breathe as far as your win-loss goes, not to the point of it being ridiculous, like I said, but if you're Alabama, yeah, you've got a little bit more room to have, even more daring scheduling, knowing that you might have an extra SEC game and you're not going to punish your fans by scheduling some, nobody. You're going to still go out there and, play West Virginia, even though you've got an extra SEC game coming. I think that's great. I think that how could that not be better, really, in the long run? That's better games, is it not? Isn't that what everybody's wondering about? It's like, I don't know. Yeah, you might have a team who's got an extra loss, but at least they played a really good team in their non-conference that, set them up for the rest of their run. So I guess it's in the eye of the beholder, but good to see Alabama's moving on from their stage where, basically Nick Saban was out there trying to get as much attention on the program as possible. So how do you do that? Go play massive neutral site games in Atlanta over and over again, in Arlington over and over again, down in New Orleans over and over again. That's what they did. They're like a rock band, going around in the non-con playing these high-profile matchups in big NFL stadiums. And I think we've now reached the point kind of a decade plus in as college football fans where I think most of us in the chat can sound off on this, but I think we're all kind of we're not sick of neutral site NFL stadium games, but I think we're kind of over it. Like, it's not the coolest thing in the world anymore.
You know, college teams
Yes.
in NFL.
Yes.
Okay.
Like, I mean, if you're going to see Alabama, Ohio State, I want to see it in Columbus or Tuscaloosa. I don't want to see it in Atlanta. You know, like, cool for the Atlanta fans, but this is college football. I want to see it in the college football stadium. So I like that maybe we're moving back towards more of that. I think that's great for the sport ultimately, and I think it'll be great for Bama to have more of a home and away naturally, rather than let's go to the Superdome every time we want to play a big opponent.
Yeah, and also for Bama, adding a neutral site game means that you essentially add, a third bowl game every year, because you're planning on playing 2 games at neutral sites at the end of the year for Alabama. So adding a neutral site at the beginning of the season means you're adding a third bowl game, because now you've got your fans that have to go even further out, as opposed to, we're going to go to that Ohio State game, or we're going to go to Austin, but they might not necessarily go to Vanderbilt when they play. They'll still have a bunch of fans there because there's a bunch of Bama fans that live in Nashville, but they won't necessarily do that. But you're asking, this is also maybe more in line with the college football playoff expansion, in that if you're a Bama and you're planning on playing a lot of those games in the postseason, you're not asking your fans to give even more expense to get on a plane to go to them.
Agreed. I hated when Kansas played Missouri at Arrowhead. That's from Mike. Mike Games, it's nice to see Nick Saban actually cross north of the Mason-Dixon line. From C. Jenkins, great to have you back. College campus games only. From, let's see.
It's like Texas Tech and Baylor. Like, it was cool when it was at AT&T Stadium the first few times, but then after a while, I was like, I'd rather just see them playing Waco and Lubbock. Like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, that's just kind of how I felt by the 3rd or 4th time that we had gone up
early.
there.
It was cool early, and it made sense because both have very large contingents in that market. Like Texas OU, that's, of course, a different animal with what they've been doing for forever and ever. From Patrick Cheney, I agree, Craig. I want to see the home field play a factor. Red Wine 65, no NFL stadiums unless it's a bowl. Let's see. Ohio State, Alabama will be sold out no matter where they play, 108,000 K. Yeah, it wouldn't be a pro stadium, not even AT&T Stadium. Kalani, people complain just to complain. I'm not sure what that's about, but thank you. Also, the students support the team all year just to have to go to another state and pay more to watch their school play. I guess that's in reference, K. Hustle, to perhaps a bowl game or a championship game. Yeah. No Irish stadiums either, right? Notre Dame, they just played Brigham Young in Vegas. I thought it was a great atmosphere, and it made sense for Notre Dame does that, and they can do that, and not that others can't. Not many, but they did do that.
Those two fan bases make sense because they're everywhere.
And it's also not something we've seen 10 times already. It was unique. No. It was something new. So I'm cool with that. I'm saying, like, Baylor, Texas Tech, for example. Like I just said, the first 2 or 3 times, it was cool. After, like, year 3, it was like, let's go to Lubbock and Waco again and go back to that. That's all I'm saying. The neutral site games serve a purpose. BYU, Notre Dame served a purpose. It's cool. But it's just after a while, like when Alabama's basically gone a decade plus of playing in New Orleans or Orlando-ish areas, or just whatever neutral site you want to point to. Basically, Arlington and Atlanta is really mostly where it was. Yeah, I think it's cooler that now they'll play those same high-profile teams for the most part, but they'll play them home and away. I think that's cool, and it's a nice change after a decade plus of seeing all of the big, glitzy neutral site games.